gamers. I know a lot of you are probably immediately looking at the face and going, "What is that? Who are you? You're not the counselor." Per my agreement, for those who are new to the channel, fairly new, I said if we ever hit 5,000 subscribers, I would essentially the flood theme is kicking on. Isn't this ironic? I would shave my beard at 5,000 as like an incentive, like to get us to the halfway point of my main goal, which is 10K, right? And so we hit 5K. We're almost 6K. So the beard went. Anyways, I was sent a cease and desist letter. I can no longer cosplay as Jack Black. I know, it's unfortunate. And so instead, I've decided my next, who I'm going to be cosplaying is the next body double for is Peter Griffin. Yeah, I'm cosplaying, but he doesn't. Yeah, I'm cosplaying Peter Griffin, guys. That's my main cosplay. Anyways, we like to have fun with these intros. If you're new to the channel, especially if you came for Warframe, just know that these intros is just a random, and you never know what to expect from me. Now, I did say, and we have been talking about Warframe the past couple days because I'm a man of my word. I figured why don't come out hot talking about Warframe, but I also said that we'd still continue talking about Destiny. And I saw this. There was a post on Twitter that really kind of kicked this off, manifesting Destiny 2 makes a big comeback in 2026. And I don't think that's going to be possible because of Bungie. And I think a good reason it is because of if you want to know the future of Destiny, you got to look at the past. That's why we have history classes. You want to know whether someone's learned their lesson, whether they've changed, is you look at their previous behavior. And so we've got a video by the Mad Scorpion, Destiny 2's long history of controversy. We're going to look at all going in 2026. We're going to remind ourselves all the things that Bungie, or at least I'm assuming everything. If they're missing anything, I'll try to throw in my hat what I know that Bungie's done with controversy for this game. Remind ourselves of all the things that Bungie has done with Destiny. And we're not even talking about like the R theft from Marathon, right? But just to remind ourselves, and yes, someone's going to be like, you should just move on. You're stupid because you don't do that with a relationship. Sure, you can forgive, but you never forget if someone cheats on you or does something to you, right? Anyone with self-respect will still hold the person accountable and hold that. Now, you're not over their shoulder in a relationship, obviously, like, hey, you gonna cheat on me? Hey, you gonna cheat on me? No. But we're talking about, $1 billion company and you're buying a product for them. It's like, hey, are you gonna sell quality product? Are you going to actually make sure that my money is worth it? And the answer is to the current state of gaming is no. Most gaming companies don't care about providing a good product. They just care about milking, cutting corners, and getting as much money out of you as they can for minimal. Which you're seeing a turn. You're seeing the grand turn of the century, which is fan-freaking-tastic for us gamers, is to see the fire lit under these gaming companies, especially now that RAM and GPUs are going to be skyrocketing. So and who knows how much consoles are going to cost. It is going to be, they cannot be doing this stingy, hey, we're going to milk you and raise prices. It's just, I do think we're going to get to a point where it might become a value proposition that people may not game anymore except for indie games, and we'll see. But let's talking about that, and let's jump right in to Destiny and see let's remind ourselves some of the controversies that Bungie has put this game through.
Controversy. That magical word that literally no developer or video game is immune to nowadays. After all, Expedition 33 got a case of dumb controversy when making a genuinely good game in the age of slop, led to it winning most of the awards it was nominated for, and somehow that was a bad thing. Yeah, I know the discussion is more.
People were so upset about this. Like, it is crazy. You can tell that people were seething. Even other, like, not to say that there were other games that should have or could have that weren't bad, that could have won different areas. I think the hate on this game is so forced. It is so forced. You don't have to like something, but to appreciate what it brings to the table, especially when it comes to developers. Like, it is so freaking forced, and you can tell who the retards are.
About the awards it was less deserving of compared to others, but I honestly don't even care who won any of the awards.
Fair.
Bungie, of all studios, especially can't escape the dramatic C word. Even when they still developed Halo Reach caught flack for the reticle bloom stuff. Regardless, Destiny,
I remember
the
that.
original, was also relatively free of controversy. Worst offenders being the sunsetting of a bunch of exotics and weapons heading into Taken King, and the general lack of mid-year content during the Taken King. But
I don't know if you consider that. I mean, that was a controversy, but they've kind of always had a history of not bringing things up to level. Like, that was pretty keen. Like, hey, we're leaving behind things because the level isn't increasing. Like, that was pretty typical. And that's not even true about Destiny 1 not having like a lot of controversy. Destiny 1 was plagued with controversy and the fact that they rushed the story. The story was a hot mess, the campaign and everything, because they literally had scrapped what they were doing, and then it was a rush job. So Destiny 1 was in itself a controversy for its own existence because of what was happening in the background. Maybe it's not as controversial because people still played it, but you could definitely tell that the fragments were all over the place. So I feel like that saying Destiny 1 was semi-free of controversy. Its existence started out with controversy.
During Year 3, Bungie restored almost all of the gear from Year 1, including the iconic Galahorn and other forgotten exotics.
Which is great.
Plus, the Taken King's April update filled the content void long enough to satisfy the community while waiting on Year 3 and Rise of Iron.
Yep.
Then came Destiny 2, and that's where controversy really started happening on the regular. To start, Destiny 2 was another game entirely, so the last 3+ years of Destiny grinding, none of that carried over. That stung a little bit more after Age of Triumph was such a revolution in terms of gear grinding.
Yeah.
Iconic weapons and armor sets once made irrelevant were made useful again, and
I still don't understand. I don't care that the stuff didn't carry over. I don't. I thought it was a good thing. Now, in the time that I thought it was a good thing, and I still think it was a good thing, it would have been a good thing if the gear that we gave up, we were going into gear that was equally as fun and unique and powerful. But what we got, and I think people have been more okay with it being left behind, what we got was the double primary system.
Such large quantity that literally every weapon one could want was there for the taking. All that was left behind in favor of starting over again with a bunch of weapons that were cursed variants of AKs. Then there was the changes to Destiny's weapon system. Originally, it was a primary, special, and heavy. Primary being your general use weapon, special carrying alternate range options with extra punch, and heavy being straight up problem solving damage and killing capacity. Destiny 2 launched with the infamous changes that made Destiny seem to pander more towards competitive esports play.
And I think that was also, I think that was more Activision trying to turn it into a Call of Duty, right? They wanted to try to mainstream Call of Duty, and Destiny, you give up the identity if you try to make it a competitive, like a true blue competitive game. You kill the identity and what makes Destiny Destiny.
Special weapons were folded entirely into the heavy category, which also meant that a bunch of former special weapons were a lot less popular for loadouts when Year 1 rocket launchers were the best damage choice by a decent margin.
Yeah.
Year 2 launch also had new weapons to choose from, like SMGs plus the drum and tube grenade launchers, but they were missing machine guns for quite a while.
Which is so stupid. I don't understand why machine guns were gone. It's like, hello, a mainstay of the Destiny 1 series, machine gun. Like, even Call of Duty has machine guns. Like, what are we doing here?
Plenty of Destiny veterans were missing their high caliber belt-fed problem solvers in the early days. The weapon slot that used to be for special weapons was primary slot number 2 instead. Primary weapons that had elemental damage specifically, since matching shield elements was important in the early days, so having a more permanent elemental damage source was quite necessary. Add to it the incredibly slow motion speed of Destiny 2 Crucible, there was a bit of a learning curve transitioning between new and old Destiny. Frankly, no one I knew was in favor of the new system, they would have rather just had the original weapon system back.
Which is why a lot of people went back to play Destiny 1 Crucible for like several months to a year.
Then static rolls. Destiny was a looter shooter at its core, hunting specific perks and unique benefits to make the perfect loadout.
Awful.
However, Destiny 2 had static drops. Duplicate weapons were exact copies of each other.
Made farming useless.
Features being what mods you applied in the elemental damage, since you could manually change a weapon's damage type in year 1. Theoretically, once you got...
I thought that was cool though. I thought the ability to change the element, that was a cool feature. I feel like that should still be a thing. Like, just because you can, like, if you have like, how many we've got several hand cannons, they're all like one element. And Bungie has a nasty problem of doing this, where they release a weapon and then they release another of the same elements. And like, bro, can we finally get XYZ in that slot? Like, being able to change the element on the fly, I think would have been really cool.
Every weapon to drop at least once, there wasn't anything more to hunt. Maybe better stats on armor, but that only lasted as long as you wanted to. Some people are fine with 80 being the highest stat, some are only satisfied when they get to quad 100s, if that was even possible back in year 1. Controversy then kicked off with the 2 tokens in a blue era. Curse of Osiris was so objectively bad that Bungie nearly admitted defeat, being a few weeks away from closing doors at Bungie if the low player count.
By the way, people still compare this to Edge of Fate. The reason why they wouldn't shut down now is, one, that they're owned by Sony. 2, microtransactions are more egregious now than they've ever been. And so you have the pay pigs that are literally paying to keep the company going.
Count persisted. The new location of Mercury was pretty tiny outside of the campaign. Literally, you could do a lap around the entire space in less than 2 minutes walking. For sure, it had its moments. Iconic ones like finding Saint 14's grave in the Infinite Forest. Memeable ones like Osiris at the end of the DLC campaign.
Enough tease.
I don't know if that's copyrighted, so I'm not. I mean, it was still cool.
A boring time waiting for the next update. Warmind was definitely a step up compared to Osiris, but there wasn't room for more changes till the next year. Forsaken was enough of a success that there were only small issues that can barely be called controversies, something like Brugrusia Forge opening to the public before the first completion of the Niobe Labs puzzle, which was the trigger that was supposed to release the Brugrusia Forge and complete the set of Black Armor.
It was a small controversy because people didn't want to wait. And here's the thing, this is the problem, and Bungie should have learned this a long time ago when they were starting to get more laxed about it, but people hate if they pay for content and everyone else is able to play, but they can't play. They hate it. Now, no one else could actually play this content until after the Niobe Labs was solved, right? Which made a lot of people upset. They're like, what? Why can't I get X, Y, and Z? Why do I have to wait for some Joe Schmo to solve this? This is stupid. And so a large part of the community, and there's going to be people arguing, well, that's not true. It's true. Because if it wasn't true, then Bungie wouldn't have unlocked it early, which is exactly what happened. They unlocked it early to kind of make people happy. And so people were farming the new Forge while other people were still participating and trying to solve Niobe Labs.
The issue being no one in the whole world completed the puzzle, and the community that was waiting for the new Forge grew impatient. So Bungie just released the last Forge anyway. That was the kind of small issues that happened until Seasons came around. The big issue with Seasons was the extreme case of FOMO they presented. Season was pulled out of the world in full the moment next season began. When I mean in full, I mean in full.
Not anything left.
Season pass rewards, quests, literally every part of a season got Thanos snapped as soon as the timer ran out. This was partially fixed.
You just had to be there. You had to be a real fan, and you just had to be there.
For the next year, but multiple seasons had their own individual controversies that were almost entirely related to persistent bugs or poor design. I recall a quest, possibly for Divinity, that needed Vex kills while on the moon. During Season 8, this would have been simple due to the Vex invasion events that happened in Patrol. After Season 8 ended, it was limited to random small packs of Vex that showed up in Patrol and the group of Vex that spawned from the Salvation Portal in Patrol. Even farming the Salvation Portal resulted in a few trips back and forth. Poor quest.
I don't know if this is necessarily a controversy. It is annoying. Like it's poor. It was poor development, and you should definitely call that out. But I don't know if I would consider this a controversy. Maybe back then it was because Divinity was the best slot, and everyone wanted Divinity for the raid, and so it is more obnoxious. But I don't know if it was necessarily that controversial.
Design there, but it gets worse. Season of Dawn, aka Season 9, had the Empyrean Foundation, basically a big in-game currency fundraiser that would lead to the reprised Trials of Osiris releasing in Season 10. However, as the obelisks appeared throughout the system, interacting with them was a struggle.
By the way, I have both good and great memories of this season because this is both where I love Quarters of Time, but this is also where I end up, I was LFGing for Trials and my account got banned, and so I stopped playing Destiny. So it was both a good season, it was a bad season for me.
You interact with the obelisk, and it's likely you wouldn't be able to do anything. For some reason, a bug made it so you had a 5% chance of actually being able to use the obelisk.
I never ran into this. What? I thought the biggest complaint was that people found cheeses and were able to farm so many legendary shards, which I thought was always why we should never have gotten rid of them. But people complained
and out of the interact menu repeatedly until you eventually got the menu to interact so you could donate to the foundation. And if you messed up and backed out by accident, it's likely you would have to do it all over again. Trust me, it was so annoying having to do extra work just to theoretically give away money to a foundation. Then Season 10 had the door that wouldn't open. Season of the Worthy had a fairly tedious grand finale. Quest that meant doing 9 million public events split between 3.
Jesus Christ. This is when I came back. It was at the end of this season, and it was not good.
Locations, lots of shotgun kills, and by the time you got to the end of the grand reward, the door was bugged shut.
The fucking door.
Bungie ended up with a door bugged shut for a few weeks. It meant that the last step couldn't be finished, and the most oppressive PvP shotgun since Dustrock Blues was locked behind something only Bungie could fix. No workarounds, glitch spots, out of bounds pass.
I got that shotgun, by the way.
Stuck. A regular potential issue was the recurring delay of DLC releases that resulted in extra long seasons. On average, a season ran for 90 days, roughly 3 months in time. Oftentimes because of DLC.
It's kind of at this point with Bungie, it is more often than not that they will expend and delay the expansion. Like it just happens constantly at the point. At this point, you should just. Very rarely do they launch at the time that they say they're going to launch it.
Releases being pushed back, the last season in a year was closer to 150 days, about 5 months, potentially even longer. But it also never seemed like Bungie made content to fill the extra time. Aside from the seasonal holiday events that always happened during a certain time of the year anyways, there wasn't much else other than a promise that the wait would be worth it.
Man, doesn't that sound like what we have now, guys? We're just going to shove a bunch of pointless events that just has you do the exact same thing that you've already been doing for months, but now you get an extra drop of something, a new weapon. Guys, just keep doing the same thing over and over again, but we added a new weapon or two. Isn't that a great event?
The most damning of Bungie controversies arose with Beyond Light, sunsetting and the Destiny Content Vault. To briefly touch what all that is,
it
when
was.
Year 4 and Beyond Light released, approximately half or even more than half of Destiny 2's paid content was removed. Bungie's reasoning being that Destiny 2 was growing too large and complex, resulting in more effort going into bug fixing rather than innovating gameplay. Years later, this proved to be a bamboozle since bugs are more common and more persistent.
Which is exactly what's happening right now and why we need Destiny 3, because this game Destiny 2 is built on lies and struggles and sadness. And honestly, I don't think we could continue. Only 5 years later, and the game is just running into the same problems, except they're not going to content vault. They're just going to make what they release less and less. They're going to continue to make it less and less. Like Renegades is literally a seasonal expansion. It's not even a real expansion anymore. So that's how they're trying to get around it.
And the portal was innovation that ended up doing more harm than good. On top of the immediate removal of half of the game's space and multiple paid DLCs, there was also the sandbox constriction. Light caps were put on weapons, so as time went on, weapons would fade out as new ones came in, meaning that you had limited time with a weapon flat out. Theoretically, even raid weapons and other difficult to attain god guns were vulnerable to obsolescence just because. Something brand new like Deepstone Crypt's Succession and Commemoration could become your new favorite weapon. After all, at least half or more of the raid weapons from Crypt were exceptional loadout choices.
Yeah,
Still
I'm
only
good.
had that for a year before it dropped out. Also meant you could have found the perfect armor stats needed for Quad 100s. It wouldn't last forever, so you'd need to regrind armor before too long.
This was a stupid system, and it was never going to work with Destiny.
Massive community backlash resulted in this particular feature only lasting 2 seasons after launch, even if some damage was already done. Another round of sunsetting happened when Year 5 hit, removing another location and everything attached. Officially, this was the last removal of an entire location, but it wasn't the end of sunsetting, with seasonal locations like Titan, the Dreadnought, and others showing up for a short time before leaving at year's end. Now I'm gonna stop being chronological and refer to the repeat instances of controversy, starting with lawsuits, chief among them being the alleged Red War copyright infringement and the wrongful termination and defamation lawsuit. At face, the Red War copyright lawsuit was based on a writer that claimed multiple instances of the Red War campaign and others within Destiny 2 and other Bungie works were
And they
copied from
settled.
an unpublished work.
I recalled that them being unpublished, but the memory may have been off. No, I think it was published, but only one person bought the book. I think that's what it was, that they published it and only they had one sale.
Of theirs. Supposedly, Bungie settled when it came to this lawsuit. The wrongful termination suit is based on a former Bungie creative director being fired over alleged
This was
inappropriate
dismissed.
directed messages between themselves and subordinate coworkers. However, the former director believes Bungie fired them to avoid contractual payouts that would have resulted in $50 million being paid to the director. So far, that suit has been dismissed, but is also not final. This also isn't said as taking a side in any of these lawsuits, more so just a "these things are happening" basis. However, it wouldn't surprise me if Bungie did try to fire somebody instead of giving them money they were owed. After all, I deeply despise Bungie leadership.
No. That's exactly what Bungie did. They saw all these people, and even Michael Salvatore, which, by the way, he sued Bungie. It's funny. They did the same thing to Martin O'Donnell, where they try to cut corners, firing these people to try to cut them out of making money. This is how scummy this company is, that they will fuck over their own employees. Literally try to cut all these people out of their money, and then they get sued. Now, granted, Christopher Barrett was never going to win because he kind of screwed his own pooch by being a raging pervert. But like Martin O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore won their lawsuits and they got their full pay. Like Bungie does the stupidest, scummiest shit and makes themselves look like complete asshats and makes everyone hate them, and it doesn't even work out for them.
Choosing to lay off employees in a large wave, not only once, but twice, stemming from poor management decisions and a lack of overall empathy from the ones on top. Since Bungie leadership had several incubation projects that were spending money but not making money, all while former Bungie CEO Pete Parsons was regularly spending his wealth expanding his classic car collection.
Yeah, baby.
Pulling some money from his pockets to keep around more employees, just for him to allegedly jump ship after his Sony stock got as good as it was going to get.
Not only that, something he missed is that another leader, I forgot what his name is, specifically said when questioned whether they would take pay cuts to save to keep some of their employees, the quote was, "We're not that kind of company." We're not that kind of company. I was like, oh my God.
Justin Truman in charge, who already had the ire of the community for some time. A lot of BS happening that lost the trust of Bungie employees and the Destiny community. Speaking of happening, the multiple cases of Bungie stealing art and using it in their own work.
By the way, before he's moving he's speedline. One of the first things that Bungie had as a controversy was the XP throttling, where they lied and told people. And what it was so stupid. Throttling, keeping you from getting bright engrams, which translated into cosmetics, free cosmetics. They throttled the XP that you could get in order to get bright engrams, so you can get this free cosmetics. Yeah, there were. That was some. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else, but that's something that we glazed right past with the launch of Destiny 2. Yeah, scummy.
Now, in these cases, it's said again as a "this is what happened" basis, but in these cases, it's almost confirmed literally every time. Seasonal Roth fan art that was used in Witch Queen trailers Witness fan art used in
Yep.
a final shape cutscene, the design of a commissioned piece for Ace of
Yep.
Spades being used directly in the Nerf Ace of Spades toy, and the most infamous one, the marathon art.
There's one more. There was it never came out, was never used, but some of the pre-release like photos they actually stole from another artist. It was never used though, but they did a side by side of like what Bungie's was their pre-art with the art of the actual like artist, and it was stolen too. So Bungie has a history all dating back since the launch of Destiny 2 of taking inspiration from artists.
Theft, where an artist's posters were used in multiple blatant copies plastered all over the walls during Marathon's initial alpha. In every case of alleged stolen art, it was pretty much confirmed to be stolen in one way or another, as Bungie made efforts to compensate the artist after the allegations
eventually
were publicly. But it was always a case of a third party used it, assuming it was Bungie's work,
yep.
or a former Bungie artist unknowingly using others' works.
It's always, guys, it's always the dude that no longer works with us. It was always them. It's never us. It's never us.
It's quite easy to lay blame on someone not even a part of the company anymore
Yep.
after they were
I love
potentially
it.
laid off. There was also a fair few cases of Bungie raising prices or otherwise putting a price on content that was previously included with DLC, particularly dungeons. The first 4 dungeons were all attached to DLCs. Shattered Throne for Forsaken,
Yep.
Pit of Heresy for Shadowkeep,
Yep.
Prophecy for Season of Arrivals, and Grasp of Avarice for the 30th Anniversary Pack.
Yep.
However, every dungeon was thematically attached to seasons, but not included with a season's base price or the included content. In fact, you had to buy a year's dungeon key to access the 2 dungeons added in a certain year.
And another thing, you couldn't buy them individually, and you never got a discount. They would sell, everything would be on a discount except dungeon keys.
3 years of dungeons, all at separate cost if you didn't spend the extra money on a yearly DLC's deluxe bundle, which officially didn't actually save you much in the long run, even though buying a deluxe edition was cheaper than all parts individually. I went over this topic in more detail in a separate video. Check that out if you want to know how much it costs to be a longtime Destiny player.
Oh, baby.
That is. Season of the Deep also caught some flack because even though it was another season with the same level of content included, it was going up in cost. Regular seasons were $10 of silver.
That's
Season
right.
was $12. Don't think that went over well because every season after was still $10. Episodes are priced at $15, but that is another story entirely. The case of Bungie asking for more money for less total content in exchange. Edge of Fate can be labeled this way. Commonly, the post-Final Shape DLCs were labeled by Bungie as on par or slightly larger in total content compared to Rise of Iron.
Deeper, like how is the Edge of Fate going to be different from past expansions that we've made for Destiny?
Yeah, so at the global scale, when we're thinking about expansions in the Year of Prophecy and the formula of Destiny expansions going forward, first off, we're doing 2 expansions a year instead of just 1. And think of each of these expansions as a little bigger than something like a Rise of Iron from D1.
Well, after in-depth comparison,
That's a fucking lie.
this was not true. Again, more details about this in a separate video. I can't say
That's a fucking lie. And oh damn, I wish I put that in my Renegades review. I need to take that clip. I'm going to take that clip and put it in my review because Renegades, that's a fucking lie. It is smaller than Rise of Iron.
Renegades was more or less in total content, but I am sure a larger cost for less overall content would be justified by Bungie, or attempted to be justified because of licensing costs for vomiting as many Star Wars references and ripoffs as possible all over the DLC. While we're on the topic of recent DLCs, Edge of Fate was a similar case of game design like vanilla Destiny 2, that was fixing what wasn't broken. While Destiny's usual grind established in Year 4 had gotten stale by Year 8, instead of improving the grind we had so it could be revitalized for a new era of Destiny going into the Fate saga, Bungie released the Portal. Functionally, it was a line in the sand, because everything before the portal, be it activities or the gear rewards, functionally inferior and incapable of rising your power past a low point. What was past the line? A tedious grind meant for masochists, replaying all the same activities.
Yes, you had to be a masochist, and I'm so glad I said screw that and waited till they made everything worth it, or I did the events where it was the best way to get power. Like farming events was the best thing to get power. Playing the game itself was not.
Activities you've already played dozens or hundreds of times more. But also the farther you got down that grind, the more difficult it becomes. In short, every 100 power means you must increase the minimum difficulty, otherwise your drops don't increase in power with it. If you add more modifiers, your rewards get better, but the mission is more grueling. The most basic of barely challenging activities can, at high tier, get almost a dozen modifiers.
I still think this is funny. A hard lesson about what players actually want. You had fucking 11 years to figure out what players want, dumbasses.
Light deltas to make you noticeably less powerful, equipment lockouts, limited revives, and you could still add more to make things even more difficult. The pinnacle grind before was 10 power levels, and just running a few specific activities that rewarded pinnacle power.
Wasn't that bad.
Added raid, activities attached to the latest DLC, featured dungeons and raids, hard mode seasonal activities, all in all a few non-solo activities and a few slightly more difficult activities. Meanwhile, the new system drove away any sort of casual grinding. What was Destiny before? Doing literally anything because power drops from any source could raise your light until soft cap. Past soft cap, specific powerful rewards were needed, but as your light rose, your general drops also rose with it. Once you reached the ceiling, then it was all the pinnacle activities, but that wasn't even needed really. It was just an extra ceiling you could surpass if you were dedicated enough. As we approach the end, I'm sure I missed other controversial Bungie moments somewhere in the history of Bungie's many instances of poor leadership, corporate greed, or
I mean, some of the most recent ones, like there's been a bunch of small controversies, right? Like the 9, the whole I forgot what was Rights of the 9. Bungie said like, hey, we're going to do weekly rotations, or made it sound like there are going to be weekly rotations, but it ended up being like 3 weeks or something. Like it was just, there's a bunch of small shit like that. And then you have the big lie of them saying, hey, for Edge of Fate or Ash Irons, we're going to introduce new armor and weapons for Iron Banner. And then they give you reskinned weapons and armor, blatantly lying, and then trying to, scrub the fact that they were actually going to give us new armor, but then took the Iron Banner logo off and sold it in the Eververse store instead. Like, and then they coincidentally removed that from the art station so that no one could see that they were blatantly lying. There's just scummy shit like that adds, it stacks up, right? And it adds, when you add every little controversy, no matter how big or small it is, it does open up a bigger picture about Bungie and why you should never trust this company.
Mistreatment of their employees. After all, I just remembered how poorly Michael Salvatore was treated. Composed iconic.
Yeah, he's back. They literally kicked him to this legend. Like, I get Monty had, Marty had there's some drama, right? There was a lot going on. He's very political. Michael Salvatore is just doing what he's doing, which is making fucking music and jamming out. And they kicked him like a $2 hooker to the side. And I'm glad he sued and won.
And magnificent music for Bungie ever since Bungie's Halo days alongside Martin O'Donnell. Just for one of their main composers to be laid off. A founding and integral part of the creation of Destiny, laid off like a poor intern that joined the company at the wrong time. Just for him to be welcomed back for Renegade, to not even having a name banner for his appearance in the making of a Renegade Vidoc, and just being referred to as Mike.
I think the most exciting part about this was the opportunity to work with these guys and Mike.
Mike. Not the legendary dude that we had to desperately get back because our shit stank so bad in Edge of Fate that we needed to really make an iconic soundtrack because none of our people in-house can make iconic soundtracks like this guy. Yeah. Bungie's fucked when they go back to hire the guy. And I hope they paid him good. I hope they were like, hey, we're going to pay you extra because we done fucked up.
The man helped create some of the most recognizable soundtracks of all time. That is Mr. Salvatore. Put some respect on the man's name. Anyways, that is the end of this hybrid retrospective and rant. I may have missed something in the timeline, but this timeline is already a shitty one, so let's not.
It is a shitty timeline. Yes, and there will be more. Trust me, there will be more. Let's see. The XP throttling. Yep, I mentioned that. That stuff had a lot to do with stock options maturing and Bungie not wanting to pay out. He won his lawsuit and was paid his stock value. Good. How are there still Bungie fans? Listen, mental illness will do that to you. True, there's still so many people who give Bungie their money. I stopped years ago. Listen, if I buy anything from for like expansion, it's on the black market. 10 out of 10 thumbnail. was just kind of down with D1 Sunset because they took what they had, yada yada. Meanwhile, Warframe and where wins meet are free. First, hey, Cannonball! Hey, it's Cannonball! I see you, Cannonball. Oh, I have to. I'm not signed in. Okay, yeah. There's Cannonball. He's part of the channel too. If you see this, Cannonball, hey, what's up? How you doing? Anyways, it is very interesting. I'm sure there is even more. This isn't Destiny. Man, I'm releasing this late, but just know that I'm grinding out my brutally. This might be probably one of the most seething, like when I say seething, very critical reviews, and I'm going deep into it, and it's probably gonna make a lot of people mad. But it is what it is. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. Hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel for more. As always, check out Warframe. It's fun and it's a good community. I'm gonna do a glazy plug at the end. Don't forget, everyone. Peter Griffin sounding off. I can't do the laugh.